Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Alliance of Documentary Editors' first iteration of our Q&A session series. My name is Stephanie Andreu. I'm an editor and currently a member of the ADE's steering committee. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm on the occupied lands of the Canarsie, who were Munsee-speaking Lenape, currently known as Brooklyn, New York. I have medium-length brown hair and wear pink glasses, and I am wearing a black sweater. I'm in a white-walled room, and behind me are some couches and a bookshelf. We'll be recording this session, so if you don't want to be in the recording, you can turn your camera off and send us any questions via chat. If you're unfamiliar with ADE, we're a professional community dedicated to promoting career sustainability, inclusivity, and diversity in the workplace, as well as highlighting the vital role of the documentary editor. We champion best practices and empower our members through resources and mentorship. Our Q&A series aims to bring editors and our members together to get down to the nitty-gritty of how films are made and deconstruct and demystify the process in order to foster the next generation of editors. My script is very long. So who to better to start off with than Gabe Rhodes. Welcome, Gabe. So I'm going to read your wonderful bio. Gabe's feature documentary credits include Time, which won a directing award at Sundance this year, and We Go Green, which premiered at Cannes in 2019. Matangi Maya MIA, which won a special jury award at Sundance in 2018. Newtown, The Witness, 1971, and The Tillman Story. Three of his edited films, The Witness, The Tillman Story, and Quest for Honor, were shortlisted for an Academy Award, and I bet Time will be too. He received his master's degree in documentary film from Stanford University in 2000, and he lives in Brooklyn, New York with his wife and two sons. Welcome, Gabe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I'll start us off with some questions, and then if anyone has any questions to ask Gabe, you can use the chat or come on camera and ask him. We use a stack system, so just type stack, and then I'll call your name and you can come on screen. So I rewatched it recently, so I can deconstruct it a little bit, because when I first saw it, at True False, actually, thankfully, I saw it on the big screen. I saw a three-act structure, but was that the intention? Walk us through it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you always go into a story thinking like, oh, it's going to be some kind of a three-act structure. This one, when Garrett and I started talking about structure, she just let me run with the film for a little bit. And so she gave me all this footage and she said, I don't really know exactly how this is going to play out, but you take it and run with it. And so I sort of did put a three-act structure on it, or at least I tried to provide some of the sort of narrative details that would go into a film, a traditional documentary that would sort of explain what had happened, what the story was, what happened, you know, how things are flowing through the course of production and sort of an idea of an ending. So I did have a little more of a three-act structure, but then Garrett, after we watched that cut, wanted, the way she phrased it was, she said, I think it should flow more like water. And so we started experimenting with that. So maybe it retained some of its three-act structure, but I do think in some ways we did attain what we wanted to, which is a film that sort of narratively just flows. So the time there's no restrictions in time. You can be in one time or another time, and they sort of seamlessly flow together. And the narrative, the plot structure, let's say, the movement towards his release would play in a way that emotionally, it would be structured more emotionally. And when I just look back at the film, I realized how much we were attuned to the emotions by the end of the edit. So you start in one place emotionally and you hit peaks and valleys within the structure. And so by the time you get to Rob's release, it is an emotional release. It's like an emotional purge. And I think that you have to build to that. So I would say it's more like an emotional structure than anything. And I mean, you could still put a 3-act structure on top of an emotional structure, but we were very, very attuned to the emotional landscape and the nuances of emotion within each of those scenes. And that is really what led us to put each of those scenes in their place by the end of the edit. We didn't always get it right in the very beginning, and you would feel it. It would lurch along until we sort of locked it into the right structure.
That's beautiful. I feel like that's really, and that's wonderful to know that, or to hear that Garrett had this like very fluid sort of relationship with it. Yeah, but I think I projected 3 acts on it because I wanted to find them, but maybe it also pertains to the emotion of it too, right? Like
I mean, I think there is if you look at it and you want to see that, if you have your 3-act structure glasses on, it's there, right? I think that you're basically getting the foundation of the story, which is the robbery. And then I think you need to get this trajectory of this character who really finds her legs. So I think that where we found the linchpin of the turn is in that scene, I think, when she's in the church and she's sort of like owning up to her responsibility for the crime. And that we found at the Sundance Labs. We didn't have that in our first cuts, and we didn't know the value of it until we sort of were working at the labs, and then we looked at it and we were like, oh, this is it. This is the turn. This is sort of the turn from, I guess you would say it's like act 2 to act 3, I guess, right? Because that's where the resolution starts to come. From that point on, you see this person kind of grow into the person that she is now. And I guess act 2 would really be sort of like the moment where you've established what the crime was, and you're with the family and you're watching the fallout from that act. So there are these sort of 3-act things, but it really was a matter of finding these like these scenes that we could hinge on and building around those. And that one was the big one. You know, that was the revelation to us. Oh, this is how we can really turn this corner and get the rest of the film falling into place.
Wow, that's cool. Because it's funny because I feel like it is definitely that scene, but it also feels like the moment where she says like there's this 2-week deadline of like how there's something different gonna happen with his case.
Yeah,
that also is a shift in like, okay, now we're gonna propel into an actual thing that happens now.
right. So we also knew we needed the momentum you couldn't, part of the structure of the film, and this is the water part of it, is that you're seeing the same thing over and over and over again, like the phone calls, and it's like,
right.
That is what the movie's about, is the repetition of being in a situation like this. And so when I knew we needed something to feel different in order to tell the audience, like, don't worry, we're heading towards home plate here. You got to just hang on, because otherwise you lose people. And so I guess I would say that scene in the church became the linchpin to sort of move to shift a momentum towards that next scene, which would then develop that momentum a little bit more. But the emotional, that scene also had to come in the right place on the emotional map. Otherwise, you wouldn't be as invested in it, and you either wouldn't have spent enough time living in her current sort of paralysis, or you would have spent too much time in it and then people just checked out. So it was just finding that right balance,
Totally. And the scene where she's like pounding her fist, that's also, I mean, there's so many emotional turns, but
yeah,
that one's like a breaking point for character.
Exactly. And that becomes, as I remember it, that moment comes in a very, very important part of the film, where that is also something we were building to. Like, it had to hit at the right spot, and when it did hit, if it didn't hit in the right spot, then the whole film would fall apart. So it literally was moving around to the last day of the edit. Sorry,
amazing.
My dog is drinking water and stuff. Sorry. It's family activity.
Yeah, that, I mean, I remember seeing that early on too, and that scene is like everything.
It's like one of those things when you start looking through footage and you're like, well, that's going to be that's the one that
Mark.
got, yeah, build everything around that, you know it.
Yeah, yeah, let the river flow to that, and
Yes,
then
exactly.
and then it
That's the
can
dam
explode.
breaker. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
downbreaker.
Yeah.
Amazing. That we should definitely call it that. Okay, that, I think that is our structure talk, at least for a second. Um, let's see. My other sort of thinking was that I know that this was shot for a short, so there wasn't a lot of footage, or like typically a lot of footage. Like there was like 10 days,
Yeah.
12, I don't know how many. There wasn't a lot. It was
Yeah.
atypical in terms of like how much footage you had to work with. And I
Yeah.
know the archive kind of blew that open for Garrett.
Correct.
So was that a good challenge creatively to make them speak to each other, or was it
A really good question. I think it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like you sort of, it's like you're either gonna, no matter what it is, you have to turn it into an asset. That's how I felt when I looked at it. So my initial instinct was, oh my God, maybe there's not enough footage here for a feature. And I think Garrett felt the same way. And one of the first things we had to do was tell the production company whether it was going to be a feature or not. So when I came on, I was, booked for whatever it would be, a short edit, like a 10-week edit. And then in that 10 weeks, we had to decide whether or not we were going to ask them to commit to another, several months of editing. And, I mean, you were involved at that point, Stephanie. Like we were looking at all of that archival. That archival didn't come until it came just before I came on board. So, but Garrett was lost. She didn't know what to do with it. It was just, she shot this whole thing as one thing, and all of a sudden it could have opened up into a whole nother package. So going through that footage was, for me, really eye-opening. And I remember thinking, there's just enough here. Like, I don't think there's an abundance. I think it was maybe 80 hours or something. I was like, that was a lot of footage, but a lot of it felt like home movies. And then there was just enough to sort of, that rose above that. And Fox herself, I think, is a filmmaker. So she shot things in a certain way that I was like, these would be really useful. They were very economical. And Garrett is an extremely economical filmmaker and knew what she wanted to get when she filmed. So even though there was only 12 days or 14 days of shoots, each one was filled with like precisely what she wanted to tell. So the edit was fast. I mean, I think we did our first cut, I think was in less than 2 months. And that was what we took to the labs, to the Sundance labs. So it had to be a full cut. It wasn't just like, here's a bunch of scenes slapped together. It actually played like a movie, Mm-hmm. And so we were able to do that really quick. And then the next, whatever it was, 4 months, 5 months, we slowed down a lot and really sort of fine-tuned things. It wasn't even close to the same film, but the bones were there, and it ended up being a pretty short edit because of the small amount of footage. So I see it as actually as a blessing, because I'm working on a film right now that has 1,500 hours of footage, and it's like that's a blessing of a different kind. That just, it's like you have to climb this really big mountain, but then when you get up to the top of the mountain, you have like all these decorative elements work, but you have everything at your fingertips. Whereas Garrett's was kind of like, we quickly got to this summit, and then it was like getting the last little pieces were really difficult because we had such a small amount of stuff to work with.
Right. Well, I feel like just knowing the footage and like seeing the final film, you like yeah, like every time I look at all the footage or like the way that you cut it, I'm like, damn, that's like some really smart shit in here to make this footage work for its time.
I just think that's part of the process of honing. You know what I mean? You're just constantly honing. And then you just start to see it. So it's just a matter of having the time and the, you know, you just don't stop, right? And that's, you can call it smart, but I just kind of feel like if you see it in there and you know it's there, you'll get to it no matter how little of material you have. You just have to spend the time.
Totally. Amazing. I have some submitted questions, but if anybody else wants to ask a question and come on screen or submit a question, please feel free to. Somebody asked, how do you tackle history issues in the cutting room and what is your process? I'm not sure what history issues mean.
Let's think about how we can interpret that. Well, I think in this film, there's sort of a personal history to be told. That's Fox's personal history, and that involves the robbery, but then it also involves her personal development. The robbery, the details of the robbery are kept very abstract in this film by choice. That was Garrett's intention from the beginning. She insisted the details don't matter. And I think just as editors, we're prone, like the easiest thing to build as an editor is to be like, well, this is the story. So I'll just put this detail followed by this detail and this detail, and that tells the story. Right. That was my first pass on it. And she was like, okay, now just take all that stuff out. And I was like, what do you mean? How do you take it out? And then there's no story, you know? But actually, she was right. You could strip it away as you built other elements and you lived in their lives. You didn't need the details as much. And the story she was trying to tell was a universal story that you just needed to earn the trust of the audience and invest them in Fox and her family in order for the audience to let go of needing to know these details. And so in terms of like that history, we worked really hard to get exactly the right balance of information where we could give just enough to keep people in and really not trip anybody up with too many historical details, which you would quickly go into the weeds with that stuff. And then in terms of personal history, I just think you have a lot of responsibility as an editor and as filmmakers to respect and honor somebody's personal trajectory. And someone like Fox, who gave us her entire personal archive of 20 years, footage that she hadn't looked at in almost 20 years. And in the film before I did with MIA, you know, also gave us a lot of her personal archive. You really do have this responsibility to treat it with respect. And, you know, you're basically representing someone's life, and the best thing you can do, you can receive after working that hard on something is like what I got at Sundance when I met Fox, and she just gave me a big hug. And she understood what I had done work-wise and was so appreciative of handling it delicately and treating her with respect. So that's kind of all you can ask for, I think.
Yeah. I saw pictures from the screening, and I think I was crying just at the idea that all of the boys were there. And just,
oh my God,
yeah, I can't imagine.
It was the best. Yeah.
Oof. Let's see. When watching through footage for the first time, which scene gave you the first spark of connection and inspiration?
That's a great question. I think it probably was that one where she pounds her fist on the table.
Yeah.
Well, it was that, and then it was it's the scene when they like finally meet, you know, and they embrace each other. Like that's one of those days in the edit room where you're just like, you're like just a sobbing mess, you know? And like Garrett, of course, is like, I didn't get the shot. It's no good. It was really bad. You know, and then I turned on this footage and I was like, oh my God, like I just was floored by it. Yeah.
It's such a great angle too, because she's like, you know, a queen in this frame.
You know how like, if you're a filmmaker and you have a certain thing in mind and you know this is the crux of your film, if it's not exactly like what you anticipated, you're going to feel
Yeah.
like it's a disappointment. So she was just nervous about it. And when I
Totally.
looked, it's amazing, you know. I was just like sobbing. And so I think those kind of emotional reactions you hold on to, and you're like, this is, you got to build to this. You got to earn it. I got to earn it.
Yeah. 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 Vital first reactions.
Yeah. Vital first reactions.
Let's see. Another question is, I'd love to hear Gabe talk about how they were thinking about the role of music in the edit and how to use music and how the use of music evolved over the course of the edit. Excellent question.
Well, maybe we should go to the tape because I actually have some old cuts. We could look at some of the temp we used.
Yes.
Cool. I'll just say that, so I started working, I'm a musician and I love picking out temp music. And I gave this cut to Garrett with all this temp and she was like, okay. And then we worked with that for a while. She didn't say much. And then one day she was like, you know, I think we should listen to this Ethiopian nuns music and check it out. And we just, yeah, I listened and I was like, this is amazing. And so she said, let's just lay it into the whole cut. So that really was that music, the music that's in the cut now really came from Garrett's inspiration of hearing that album. And we just knew that was the voice of the film. But I'll be happy to look at the old stuff and
let's do it.
See how it didn't work. Hold on.
God, that I've totally used that a song in a cut already.
one of those tracks, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, this is too incredible.
I know, it's so evocative.
So good.
So I'll just say, I'll just pop to the beginning of this cut because I don't really remember the temp we were using, but this is sort of indicative, I think, of some of the stuff. Let me share my screen.
Okay.
So this is actually the cut we brought to the labs. So this was like very early in the edit. This is whatever, 2 months in or something. Oh, you know what? Hang on. Forgot to share my system audio. Tell me, I'm just gonna pop in the middle. Can you hear me?
In fact,
yeah.
you have
good in here. Yeah.
So here's some of the temp we had later, and you'll see footage in here that wasn't actually in the film, didn't end up in the film.
I was born Sybil Verdette Fox on August 18, 1971. I came from a people who had a strong desire to have something, to make something out of ourselves. My mother, school teacher who raised 4 children on a public school teacher's salary. She taught me from a very young age that the American dream was real. So you ask yourself, how do people get into situations where they think about committing crimes? I'm here to tell you my story. Chapter 1, from the beginning.
Yeah, so that was kind of the vibe, you know. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, totally.
I'll show you just one other piece. There was a couple of times where I went like for super dramatic. I think this is one.
Everything's already been worked out for them.
Oh, wait. See if I can find it.
I mean, what's interesting is that I definitely feel like it needed classical instruments no matter what. I don't know why.
Yeah, that was my first instinct too. Is
Yeah,
it needed to be organic music, and
yeah.
it needed to be. There's like a fine line between like sort of heartfelt music or music that's emotionally touches you, and sappy music. And I wanted to sort of, I didn't want to go too sappy, obviously. So I actually was working. I think that music and a lot of the stuff I used in the temp was with a musician that I met years ago in Brooklyn. And I was I had wanted to work with him for a while. He's sort of like an experimental cellist, and so I was
Mm.
not pushing, but I was like, "Hey, Garrett, we can work with this guy if we wanted to." And it just never really quite clicked for her. It never felt right. So I think
Desperate people do desperate
where
things.
Mm.
I absolutely have no idea what the hell we were thinking. I genuinely understand what people mean when they say that I had a moment of temporary insanity. When I dropped my husband and his nephew off to take money from a bank, immediately after they got out of the car, I knew. We had started something we could not stop. My mama said, shit is easy to get into. It's been 20 years, y'all. It's been 20 years, y'all. It's been 2 decades, y'all. It's been 20 long years. It is hard to get out of. Chapter 5, the morning after.
So I look at that now and I'm like, oh my God, it's like so over the top. But it actually helps. I really do work with like temp in a way that's like, usually my temp music is like over the top because it gives me confidence in the sort of mood that I'm trying to go for. Like, obviously that's an important, intense part of her story. So I just want to accentuate it as much as possible in a way, because I don't trust the material yet. It takes me like a while to trust it. And then once I sort of trust it, once I sort of sit back and look at it in a broader way and go, okay, this is working, I then strip all that stuff away. I call it scaffolding. And the scaffolding I use tends to just be really like ugly and big. And, in hindsight. But I think it did help. Also, you see a lot of it's very airy, that music, and it had a lot of space in it. And I think that did stick. That's what the soundtrack ended up being, so it helped to define that too.
Yeah, there's tons of breathing room in it. I mean, obviously the compositions, are really beautiful and emotive, and
Yeah.
but it's not just the nuns compositions, right? There's other bits in there too.
Yeah. So Garrett had worked with a composer on her last couple of films, and he came in at the end and sort of filled in that other voicing, which we knew we would need for a few different scenes. So, hopefully they integrate nicely together. But I think when people write about the music or think about the music or talk about it, it's her. She's the voice of the
Yeah,
music of the
totally.
film.
Yeah. Yeah, that's who flashes in my
Yeah.
in my mind when I think about the film.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Let's see. It's in color.
Oh, I know, right? That's another.
Did.
We didn't drink. We didn't go black and white until, I don't know, a month before we finished.
Yeah. How did, I mean, I think I know the answer, but go, I don't know. How was that decision? How did that go?
Well, like Garrett's other films had been in black and white to then. And so I think she lived with it in color for a while and just felt like it was part of this other body of work that she had already made. And they're thematically connected. And I mean, even characters are connected. Like she found Fox through, as a friend of the character of her last film, Alone. And so she just was like, no, it needs to be black and white. And so it literally was like that one day. She's like, and we're going to make the whole thing black and white. And I was like, okay, apply the filter across the board. And that was that, you know, and it clicked. And that came about at the same time as the music. So they informed each other. That music feels like it's asking for black and white too. It's evocative of that.
That's true. And it kind of enhances the riverness of it all because it becomes this one thing.
Yeah.
All the textures.
It unifies the archival and the current day footage too.
Yeah. And also it blends time. Okay, I'm gonna shut up. So someone's asking, at the end of the film, I think the archival footage literally rewinding in front of us says a lot about lost time. What does the ending represent to you, and how did you go about constructing it? Were there other endings you played with, and how did it evolve?
Maybe we should go to the tape. We can look at that. Yeah. It's a great question. I think, well, I'll just tell you the story and then maybe we can look at the footage. But we had another ending, but we were struggling with it. We didn't like it. And we tried a bunch of different things, took a bunch of stabs in the dark. None of them quite worked. And again, like Garrett comes in with these like kind of crazy ideas, like just first thing in the morning, like, I think we should try this. And she literally was like, I think we should just take the whole film and speed it up like really fast and then play the whole thing in reverse. And I you know, your editor brain is like, that's nuts. Like that, you know, but it's also like, well, you never know, maybe it'll spark something. So I did exactly what she suggested. And it played like, it was ridiculous. Cause it just, you know, you saw the interviews in reverse, you know, like that kind of but the intention was there where you're like, there's something in this idea. And so I went back, I looked at all the archival again, and I made selects of everything that felt like it could play in an interesting way in reverse. And I did an only archival version of that. And we looked at that and we were like, oh, this is awesome. And then you have the other problem where you're like, is every shot going to be in reverse? Like, does it need to go backwards in time? Like what are we using as an organizing principle for this reverse? And I'm glad we didn't just do it as a time reverse. It's more like, it's about motion and it's about energy and it's about like the way that sequence builds towards something. It's telling you a story in reverse, but it's also, it's allowing you to like let go of everything you watched and let go, like the way that Fox and Rob are able to let go of their past, you're able to sort of let go of the film. So the first time we got it right, I just remember I just was like so moved by it and thought, yeah, that's the right ending. It took a while to get it right, but we got it, I think. Let me show you
well, the ending like grabs you and it doesn't release you until like the last second, the last shot.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, that is what like, it really taught me something about endings, you know, that it's rare that you can have a film where you like it's like a heart pounding ending, you know, in a documentary. Yeah. And it's not heart pounding in a way of like mystery. It's heart pounding in a way of like, it's doing emotionally exactly what you need and what you want. That's like so rare, you know? And it's coming off of another moment that just did that for you. So it has to be a different kind of version of that. And hopefully it plays that way, you know, as this other flavor of you know?
Yeah, it's like ugly crying and like releasing and like but it's relentless in a beautiful way and like up until the last rewind of the kiss, and then you're just like released from it and then you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. And that's how it felt when I finally watched it at Sundance. I was just like, oh God, like it just felt like you're rejected out of that film in a way.
Yeah, you know? Exactly, like rocketed out of it. Yeah, totally.
Oh, totally. So let me show you the saggy ending we had. I think this has it. So It ends in the same way that it ends at the speeches at the, you know, where they have sort of the reunion party. So you're in the same setting. I'll show you. I actually I don't remember how this was. I just remember it was bad. So hopefully it's not too bad. Is my screen on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no, sorry, I'm in the wrong one. Get this one up here.
Oh yeah, I think I remember this version.
I don't know where we're starting. Hang on now.
Hey, and it still don't feel real.
It's all right. God is good. God is good. Yes, it's all right.
I love you, man. I love
That's
you too.
all right.
And
Yeah.
but it wouldn't have been without the help of the lady that's been doing it for 21 years. It's crazy. 20 years have passed, and she still has the same kind of nephew. So whoever the woman that I find, she got something to look like. She has some work to do. To grow up. She got some big shoes. That's some big shoes to fill. But I was rooting for her to have you home. Like, more than myself, more than Rob. Like, it was, nobody else deserves this and worked for this, and she deserves that. So for every day, every minute, every second from here on, I just want you to love that woman. And don't ever let her go. And we're going to have a great rest of this life.
You spoke about the fact that before God created the church, he created the family. But before he created family, he created what I believe to be the most powerful force in the universe, and that is when he created love. If it could be an acronym, it would be life's only valid expression. I said that once I went to prison, I would stand like a man. That I would speak truth to falsehoods. That I would finish strong. And God knows I'd never give up. I believe it is that love is the most powerful force in the universe because it put me back here.
Meh. Right?
Meh.
Meh. It's like,
I remember that version.
it wasn't good, right? It just sags to, well, whatever. You're like just happy to have something to put down and show to people at that point, right? So
Right.
I mean, you remember probably too, Stephanie. It was like we hadn't quite leaned into the archival at that point. Like the archival was more like B-roll or something. We didn't know how to use it yet to let it be, to inhabit its own real estate in the film and to share the emotional language with the other footage. So part of getting to that in the film, I think we couldn't find the ending until we did that work. We couldn't, because you needed to trust that footage to carry its own. And once we figured that out, then it found its place at the end.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest ways that it did that was the jump cuts, or not the jump cuts, the match cuts that you did. Like specifically that first one that propels us into the film, I think into the juice of the film, the first one with Fox. and you suddenly, I don't know, that it felt like such an epic cut to me, like all of a sudden, because she's older, and you just know things haven't gone the way that all these dreams that she just set up in the archive, you know. And then you repeat this motif with the boys, especially Justice, you know, ironing as a grown boy, as a grown man, and playing with a sock.
Putting on a
Yeah.
sock. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are like the obvious ones, right? I think when you see the sort of the matching actions or the, you know, those are the ones where you're like, okay, I know these will help me jump through time.
Yeah.
And then looking through it again, though, I was like, all right, there's also these emotional ones, like the one when it goes to the kids in school.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that? It's like Fox is filming like it's their birthday. And so they're all these kids are sitting on the floor, all these cute little kids. And it's like that was another one of those scenes that once it found its place, it like really, really sung, because it needed to like occupy the correct emotional spot in the film. And then it meant so much more to you, because you had to be invested in justice. You had to be invested in freedom. You had to understand their relationship. And then once you knew those things, then that footage just like elevated, you know, in this beautiful, beautiful way. So that was another.
And also in this very literal way that their dad is on the phone. Like they're literally that small, and he's been in prison and is still there.
Yeah, it does. It works on all those different levels, you know. But if it came earlier in the film, I think at one point it was just like, this just seems like nothing, you know? So
Right. Yeah, totally. Oof. So much emotion. There's a question here. How long was the edit process?
So I started in late March, I think, of 2019. And we went to the labs in June. So that was whatever that was, April, May, June, that's 3 months. And then we took a little break, and then we edited from, I guess it was like August, September, October, November, December. So it's about 8 months.
Okay.
8 months, including watching all the footage.
Yeah, that feels a standard-ish.
A little fast.
Depending on the film, yeah.
A little fast, considering that it doesn't have any kind of traditional structure, right? We could have experimented longer with it, and I would say we didn't feel rushed. You know, we probably could have done it in a little bit less time, but it was nice to have the time to stretch within it.
Yeah, that's what it's so critical. I feel like nobody appreciates that anymore, or really takes the time for the experimenting.
That's true.
Okay, can you talk about the decision to bring in Fox and her son's written narration / VO? Was the film originally structured that way?
So because Garrett had made these films prior to that, where she has this really interesting interview process. She would instead of interviewing them directly, although she did a little of that too, she would basically give them headphones and like a recorder, and then she would give them recorded questions, and they were like really abstract questions. Like there's that one that's like, what does time mean to you, you know? And so their way they're talking, because they're kind of, and she would put music on the recording too. So she would plant music in their ears and questions in their ears, and then ask them to like respond to that. And so she'd get these very sort of ethereal responses. And that led us that was like one of the voices in the film, right? That's sort of that sort of ponderous kind of like, you know, it's not expository. It's more just like, I don't know, metaphysical kind of talking, you know? And then there's like Fox, who we did not interview. We just used the audio from that stage recording. So that has another sort of timbre to it, you know? And so it's like, how do you blending those two together was a trick, but also like a great problem to have, because they're both so evocative in different ways. So it's just a matter of finding the blending. Oh, and then you have Peggy, right? Miss Peggy, her mom, who is like very traditionally interviewed, but has a very, like, you almost ask one question, then she just goes, she's just off, you know, she's just doing her own thing. It's like, she's just a great interview. So all of those pieces just needed to fit together in a way. So they did help to structure it, because it was like, well, this doesn't work here because we just came off of this tone. We have to earn this next tone. So it helped to sort of, you know, iron out some of the transitions and stuff, because you knew you needed to shift in terms of tone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because originally you had her book reading to be the undertone, like the thing that was taking you through a little bit, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it still does, but we really, like you heard in that, when we started watching the old cut, it would go chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And I was using the book chapters as a way to sort of structure it.
Right.
And then that meant you had to keep returning to the stage, and that became kind of a burden for people in the audience. So we just sort of like got rid of all that and used that as just audio. And then it just became a matter of like, when are you going to set up that this thing was recorded on a stage and that she's performing the story for people? You know, again, it's a good problem to have. It helps you to figure out the structure. Right.
Or it was definitely like used in the right way, I think, because it was like those emotional moments where you kind of needed to see her face say those things.
Right. So it gave you that option to get to that, right? And be like, this is one more spot we can return to this place.
Right.
Yeah. So it does, those limitations help, I think.
Yeah, they're totally fantastic tools. Another question is, what were some of the biggest obstacles and doubts you had to grapple with in the edit?
Well, we talked a lot about obstacles, but I mean, I'm always filled with doubts in the edit. Like, I think editing is all about, it's like projecting self-confidence when you really don't have it. Like, everybody else, like, I got this, but you never really feel secure about it.
I don't got this.
Yeah. Anxiety. You know, I think this one, so like I said, we had 6-8 weeks or whatever to determine whether it was going to be a feature. And, you know, Garrett hadn't worked with an editor before, right? She had her own films. So for her, it was like a new experience. And she was putting a lot of trust in me. And I had never worked with a production company, Concordia, before. They were amazing. But they were putting a lot of trust in me. Like, you're going to tell Garrett, you know, help her figure out whether or not, because you've never worked with an editor before, and you've cut all these features, so you have to tell her if it's a feature kind of. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know. You know, I trusted my instinct, and I was like, it's a feature. And then I kind of hung up the phone, and I was like, oh my God. So that was like that's fear. That's a scary thing. You know, then you have to make it work. But once Garrett like agreed with that, like once I convinced her, she was like, yes, you're right. You're totally right. Then I trusted it. Cause I was like, now we're a unit on this, and we have to survive it for each other. And so we got to that point, you know, where we figured out that it actually was a feature, and then we could relax a little bit.
Yeah. So was her, I know Garrett's an editor. Was that a good thing? Not a bad thing, but was it like she understood and respected the process? I mean, I know you said that she hadn't worked on it before, so you had a lot on your shoulders, but did that also come with, you go do your thing?
Oh, like immediately. That's what's awesome about Garrett, is I feel like she came in and she was like, let's have like some really big talks about what I think the film is and what you're seeing in the footage. And I remember this vividly. I was like, okay, so what's the next step, Garrett? Do you want do you want me to put together some scenes and run it by you? Like we have like 6-8 weeks to get this thing together for the labs. Like how do you kind of want to structure the edit? She goes, I don't know, man, just like take it and like make the thing you think is what it's going to be. And I was like, okay. So she was so just like, I want to see what you think the footage is. And she just gave me free reign. And I remember saying at one point, like, do you want to see, like, we were going to the labs, like in, I don't know, 8 days or something. And we were supposed to show it to all these people. And no, maybe it was more. It was like, we had 2 weeks. And I was like, do you want to see it like a week before, at least a week before, maybe 2 weeks before, just so you know what it is. And then we can talk about the direction. And she's like, no, just show it to me when you feel like it's ready. So she totally was like so trusting, with knowing that we didn't even have a lot of time to correct it before we showed it to people. And when I showed it to her, she was like, oh my God, I had no idea this was there. Like, it was like such a different version of what she had in her head. And she was so open and receptive to it. It wasn't the right film at all, but I think it guided her in a way to make, to see like what wasn't working and what she never thought could work was there. And so that started the process, super
That's
open.
amazing. Were you just like, okay, so I'm gonna show up to the labs and here we go.
I felt really good about it. What I put together, I was like, I think this is like good for where we are.
Yeah.
I felt like that. And I'd been to the labs before with another film. So I knew where some people are in their process, and it's not a performance at all. It is like it's a collaborative and supportive space, but you can't help but feel a little bit like this is the first time I'm showing any of this to anybody, and you want it to be good, and your peers are there watching it. So you don't want to, fall on your face or anything. And I felt good about it. And fortunately she did too.
Yeah. Did you show it to any friends? I'm like, you must have shown it to someone.
I don't think
awesome.
Nobody saw it.
That's great. That might be a great strategy too, just to be like, we're here, this is it.
Or an awful strategy. I mean, like, I can't think of another filmmaker who would let me like work until 1 week before a public showing of something and just be like, I try, you got this. Like I just don't see that happening.
Yeah.
I think that is the great thing about Garrett is she's like a true artist and so trusting of her own instincts. And so she was willing to let me drive for a while and knowing that like she could pull it into what she wanted it to be. And then also super generous to respect and to retain some of the things that I brought to it. And that she saw as huge, big assets, so it became a collaboration in the truest sense.
Right. Well, speaking to her vision, I know we had like an earlier conversation about these hanging shots of a fox on the phone.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Those?
Yeah. So that's the big thing I learned from Garrett is that I think that my instinct usually is to cut much, much faster. I think most editors would, but like you kind of want to move through footage and you don't want to lose people's attention. And it was like a constant direction from Garrett, like slow down, like let's just extend that like another like 20 seconds. Or I'd be like 20 seconds. She'd be like, yeah, 20, just keep going, unroll it more. And at first it just went against all my instincts, but slowly I started to see what she was earning us, and that like the value within the frame, if it's the right frame and if you are attached to something in that frame, you can watch it for so much longer than you think you can, even with our short attention spans. And I learned so much from the edit because of that. She had to force my hand to begin with. And then eventually I started to just roll with her pacing. But it didn't help that I was coming off of like a racing car movie, like that, like couldn't have been more polar opposite. But I do think that there's, if you can ever get your hands on a film where someone just wants to take their time, it's like a profound, mind-opening experience for an editor, I think.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, there's like that scene with where she's waiting and then you cut to Justice like futzing with so I think like I don't even know if that's really in the same moment, but there's like an extension of that moment, and you cut back to Fox still on the phone and her eyes like twitching a little bit. There's so much tension in that.
Isn't it? It's amazing. And you don't, when you're going through footage, when you're used to going through a lot of footage, you sort of move, you're like, nothing's happening here. So you're kind of moving through stuff, you know, looking for the action, and all the action is within the frame with her. And it's so subtle. So you have to sit down to see it. And I think when you're putting that on an audience, you have to teach the audience, this is what it's going to be. So just change your expectations. Like I was so scared to show this to my dad, you know, or someone like that, who's just like, what is happening here? There's nothing going on, you know? He got it. So hopefully people can watch it and understand why they're watching it in these long holding shots. Totally.
I think overwhelmingly it's working. And yeah, it sounds like it's, you know, the film's success is a testament to trust and artistic time, and really letting people do their thing as collaborators, as artists, as filmmakers, rather than just like putting people through the ringer of production.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And I think it's a rarity, increasingly rare these days. But so grateful, you know, to Garrett and also the producers and everybody who just gave us that space. They really respected her talent and were like, you know, we're going to give Garrett all the support she needs. And that's also rare, but when it happens, is good things come out of it. So it worked.
Yeah. Oscar winning things. No. But that's just me. I'm projecting. It's fine. I think that's all the questions we have, and it is 10 o'clock.
Yeah. Pretty good. We did good.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Editors know.
Editors are awesome. Thank you guys for all being here and listening. Hopefully.
Thank you, Gabe, for your time on a Friday night. Pretty late.
Almost my bedtime. Yeah.
Yeah, same.
Thank you, guys. I see everybody in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Guys.
Okay.
I'll talk to you soon, Steph.
Talk to you soon. Okay. Bye. Bye.